Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Torie and Ren YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be making one of these pouches, and they have a very unique shape because of the way we cut and sew our pieces. As always, I've made a couple of them to show you the different fabric combinations, so I'll show you each one of them individually, and then we'll get started with our tutorial. So this is the first one I was actually just holding, and the fabric here is by Clara Jean for Dear Stella, and then I just used a woven fabric for the binding, and I hand sewed my binding for this project, but you are more than welcome to machine sew yours. So I'm going to open it up in here. Mine might be a little bit wrinkled, but in here I just used this flower pull. I put a little zipper charm, and then I used my silver magnetic snaps. So that's actually how these pouches open. They open in here, and I have a little bit of tissue paper in there. So the zipper is nice and secure because you actually have this magnetic snap closure and the zipper closure. And then it has that really cute shape. This is the next one here. I believe this is Rifle Paper Company fabric, and it's metallic, so it has a metallic gold. And then this is just Moonscape by Dear Stella for the binding. Inside here, because it had that gold metallic, I used gold hardware. I just used this bar pull from Sally Tomato, and all the zipper tape I use is by Sally Tomato. It's number 5, and then my magnetic snaps are also Sally Tomato, I believe. This next one is Farmer's Market themed. I believe I got this fabric from Sewers Club. If I can find it, I will put it down below in the description box. And then this top part is actually holiday fabric. I thought because it was such a small piece, you might not even notice. And I thought the green picked up with the other greens pretty well. So that's why I chose that one. And then inside, you have a strawberry zipper pull to match with the strawberries on some areas of the pouch. And then just all antique hardware. For this next one, I just used this seed packet fabric paired with this yellow stripe. And this one's actually a woven. I believe it's by Robert Kaufman. Then inside, oh, I have it backwards. Whoops. Inside, I have a tomato slice pull, so it matches with the tomato here. I think this is actually an orange slice, but I thought it matched with the tomatoes here, so I used it. And then again, all antique hardware. Last but not least, we have this raspberry one. This is one of my favorite ones, even though it catches a lot of lint. But this fabric is a mystery fabric. I have no idea what the collection or line is, so that one's a mystery. I did use this green binding here to pull in some of the greens. And then inside, just a bottle opener pull with antique hardware. So those were all of my pouches. If you'd like to make one, you can follow along in this video. I'll have the full instructions and measurements in this video, as well as the templates in the description box. If you'd like the written instructions, you can find them down below in my Etsy shop. But let's get started. Beginning with the templates, if you purchase the pattern for this project down below in my Etsy shop, it will have included a full set of templates needed to make the pouch. Now, if you didn't purchase the pattern, that's no problem. Some of the templates will be included down below, and measurements will be provided for the exterior binding piece. But if you have the pattern, it will also come with a set of piece labels, so you can cut these out and attach them to your pieces to keep track of the piece letter, name, size, and print it's cut from. So when we reference them, you'll know exactly which piece to grab. Now, if you purchase a digital pattern, you're going to print your pieces at 100% size or actual size so that they match the measurements listed on the pieces. So one piece, piece E, will need to be joined. I have it here. And what you're going to do is you're going to follow the instructions on the piece. So it says here, join pieces E1 and E2 along this line matching these circles. So you're going to do just that. You're going to join E1 and E2 along that bottom line. You can see my circles start to line up. And piece E2 actually includes a rectangle right here so that E1 has something to rest on. Now you can use double-sided tape under here, you can use a glue runner, or you can use plain old desk tape and just tape it together along that line. And once joined, it should match the measurement here, so 9.5 by 9.5. So if you're printing your pattern pieces, you're going to cut them all out, and we're going to move on to the cutting. I also do want to note that I typically do have a sample here to show you what each of the pieces will be used for, but I took those pouches to a craft show and I sold all of them, so I actually have no samples left. So I will be showing you each of the pieces and I'll just be telling you what they're for. Beginning with print A, you're going to need 2 pieces cut from piece A. So these are my 2 pieces, and I just fussy cut mine to have the deer in the center of both. Now if you're using directional fabric like I am, you're going to want the top of the print to be this top curved edge and the bottom of the print to be the straight edge. Now I typically, as I said before, have a sample here on the side to tell you what this is for, but unfortunately mine are all gone. So this piece is actually going to be the outer front and back of our pouch. So this is going to be the front, this will be the back, or vice versa. So that's what this piece will be used for. Next, for print A, we're going to cut 1 piece from piece B and 1 of piece C. Like I said before, I'm using directional fabric, so I want my direction to run vertically, as you can see here. Now these 2 pieces will be for our zipper panels, so our zipper will be sewn right in the middle here. When you open your pouch, these will be the 2 panels that are visible. Finally, for print A, we're going to need 2 pieces of piece D, and these are our side panels. So you can see I fussy cut mine again. For directional fabric, you want the top to be in this inner curve and the bottom at this outer curve. So our side panels will be on the side of our pouch here, and they actually will get a little bit squished up. So you might not actually see this print too much until the pouch is open. So again, these are the exterior. Moving on to print B, you're also going to need 2 pieces of piece A. So here's my 2 pieces. And the same thing as before, if you're using directional fabric, you're going to want the top here and the bottom here. Mine is just this vertical stripe with dots, so mine doesn't really matter. For print B, we'll also need 1 piece of piece B and 1 of piece C. This is the lining of the 2 zipper panels I showed you before, so they'll be on the inside of your zipper pocket. Now, something I want to note with this is, as you can see, my fabric isn't really directional. The lines just go vertically in both directions. So if I rotate my piece, these are actually the same pieces. So you can see here, they can actually swap places. Now, if you're using directional fabric, you still want that direction to run vertically, and you want to cut 1 piece of B and C. But if you're using fabric like mine, you can just cut 2 of 1 template if you prefer. Now, something I do want to note if you're using directional fabric is that when your zipper is being sewn to your exterior, piece C is actually going to be sewn to piece B for directional fabric, and piece B will be sewn to piece C. Now, this only really applies to directional fabric. Again, like I said, mine can be rotated either which way, but that's something to note if you want maybe different colors inside or different prints. They're going to swap places if your lining is directional. Okay, so those are my zipper panels, my lining and my exterior. For print B, you're also going to need 2 pieces of piece D. These are our side panels from before, but these will be on the inside. So again, like I said, for directional fabric, if you choose to use directional fabric for print B, the top will be at the inner curve and the bottom will be at the outer curve. For your last piece of print B, you'll need 1 piece of piece E. For those that don't have the pattern, this piece measures 9.5 by 9.5. It's a perfect square. So you can see here, this is my square. And as you can see on the template, there is a diagonal line from corner to corner, and that's for when we do our binding. So you won't be cutting this line just yet. It's just an indication of where it's going to be cut later. For Fusible Fleece, I'm using Camelot behind the seams. I believe it's called Cloud Fill Fusible Fleece. It's a little bit thicker than the Pellon 987F. So I have 2 pieces of piece D, 1 of piece C, and 1 of piece B, both cut with the glue facing up, and 2 pieces of piece A. Finally, from Fusible Fleece, you'll need 8 squares of 1 by 1. It's piece F. So I have my little 8 squares here. These will be for our snap reinforcement squares, so you'll have 2 pieces per half of your snap. For hardware, I have a number 5 nylon zipper. This is a metal look-alike zipper with an antique finish by Sally Tomato. I just free checked my ends so they don't fray. And then I also have one number 5 zipper pull. Mine is this little heart, again by Sally Tomato. You'll also need 2 sets of magnetic snaps. Mine are 1/2 inch by Sally Tomato, so you can see mine here. But you can also use the 14mm snaps from Emmeline. They're just a touch bigger, but they'll work just the same. Some additional items I'll be adding to my pouch is a zipper pull charm, just says handcrafted. And I show these on my samples at the beginning, and this is by Emmeline Bags. And then I'll also be adding a little label here. This is an organic cotton one from Sarah Hart's. Just comes in a package like this with 8 of them. Moving on to fusing, we're going to grab our pieces A, B, C, and D of print A and Fusible Fleece, and we're going to fuse them together. So I have B and C, 2 of piece A and 2 of piece D. What we're going to do is we're going to fuse the wrong side of our fabric to the glue side of our fusible fleece, and that has a distinct texture, so you'll be able to feel which side has glue on it. And we're going to take it to the iron and press it so that it fuses together. So you can see here I have all of mine aligned, and I'm going to fuse all those pieces together. Now, after these are fused, the only pieces of fusible fleece you'll have left are your little 1-inch snap reinforcement squares. We're now going to prepare our binding ahead of time for later on. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our 9.5 by 9.5 inch square, or piece E. We're going to grab a ruler and a rotary cutter, and we're going to cut across from the bottom left corner to the top right corner. Now, once your piece is divided, you're going to bring the top left half over to the right, just like so. And then you're going to put them with right sides together, aligning the straight 9.5 inch edge. So just like that. Now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to offset it by 1/4 inch so that when we start our seam, we're actually catching both layers. If we were to align it up here, when we start our seam, we'll only catch the top layer. So we're going to offset it by the seam allowance, so 1/4 inch, just like that. Make sure our edge is aligned, and we're going to sew across here using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now that our piece E binding piece is joined together, it should look something like that. You're then going to open it up and press your seam allowance to one side. Press mine that way. Once it's pressed, you're going to rotate it so that the top and bottom are now the edges with stretch. So you can gently tug on the fabric to make sure. Now that that's rotated, we're actually going to cut 3 strips measuring 1.5 inches. So I'm going to grab my rotary cutter and my ruler. And what I like to do is I actually like to straighten this bottom edge first. Just give it a quick cut, just like that. Remove that so that I have a nice straight edge to work with. I'm then going to cut my 1.5 inch strips one at a time, making sure to align that edge. Now it is a bit tricky for me to cut with my camera here, but I'm going to try my best. So that's 1 strip, and this is my 3rd strip measuring 1.5 inches. So next what we're going to do, I'm going to set aside this little piece of extra and my rotary cutter. And then we're going to join these 3 strips together to form one long strip. So starting with my first strip here, I'm going to put it on the table with the right side facing up and it horizontal. I'm going to grab my second strip and I'm going to place it on top with the right side of the fabric facing, just like so. And I'm going to have this strip running vertically so that these diagonal edges align. Now, similar to what we did before when we first joined our binding together, I'm going to offset this seam again, or this piece, by 1/4 inch. So we're going to offset it just like that, and then we're going to sew across using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now by offsetting it, what happens is when we open our strip, if we offset our seam, this edge ends up being straight across. If we didn't do that, and we put our piece down here and we sewed 1/4 inch to 1/4 inch, your piece would end up off by 1/4 inch like that. So it's important that we offset our piece so that the binding strip ends up straight across. So once you've joined these 2 strips together, you're going to move on to joining this strip, and you're going to repeat the same process. You're going to grab your last strip, place it on top with the right side facing, and then you're going to sew across 1/4 inch seam allowance, again offsetting the strip. My 3 strips are now joined together to form one longer strip, and as you can see here where I joined my pieces, the edge here goes straight across because I offset those pieces by 1/4 inch. Once fused, your 6 pieces will look like this. So they all have Fusible Fleece now on the back for print A. What we're going to do is we're going to set pieces B, C, and D aside, and we're just going to keep piece A. We're also going to grab piece A of print B. What we're going to do to both of them is we're going to put them together with right sides facing. So print A together and print B together with right sides facing. And we're going to sew across this bottom straight edge with 1/4 inch seam allowance. The seam allowance for this project is 1/4 inch unless we're machine basting. If we're machine basting, I like to do 1/8 of an inch, so very close to the edge, and I like to increase my stitch length to about 3.5. But for this, we're going to sew a seam, a normal seam, with a 1/4 inch seam allowance here and over here. I'm back from my sewing machine, and I just joined my piece A for print A and my piece A for print B together. As you can see here, I just opened it up. For the lining or print B, I pressed my seam to one side, and for the exterior, I pressed my seam open. You're more than welcome to press it open or to one side, depending on your preference. So I'm going to leave my 2 pieces here. You're now going to grab piece D of both print A and print B, so you're going to have 2 of each. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to be machine basting them down here, centered with our joining seam on both sides for both pieces. So to make sure it's nice and centered, what we're going to do is we're actually going to mark the middle of this bottom edge, so you can see the bottom edge of my piece. And you can do that by folding it in half. And when you fold it in half, you want to make sure that these points are also together so that it's perfectly in half. And then you're going to get an erasable marking pen and you're going to mark that center fold. Then what you're going to do is you're going to align it on top in line with that joining seam down the middle. And we're just going to machine baste here, 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 and here for all 4 of our piece D for both print A and print B. Now that those are basted, we're going to begin closing the sides. So as you can see here on our piece A, these corners here are labeled point A, and that's where our seam is going to stop at point A. So what we want to do for both our exterior and our interior is we want to bring the corner of piece D, of each of our piece D, to that point A, so right up here. As you can see here, it should align perfectly because this edge here goes 1/4 inch out, and this top edge here is also 1/4 inch. So it'll go here. I'm going to grab some quilting clips. And what you're going to do is with clips or pins, we're going to evenly distribute our fabric along this curve. So I'm just going to do it quickly. So your fabric should fit in that curve very nicely. Having trouble getting these clips out of this container. Okay, so that's what it'll look like when it's been evenly distributed along the curve. You're now going to go ahead and repeat that with each side of your print D panel along each side of piece A. So again, you're going to bring that corner of piece D to point A on piece A. So right up here, just like that. Same thing over here and over here. You're going to pin or clip along these curves so that the fabric looks just like that over there. And you're going to repeat whatever you do to the exterior, you're going to do the same thing to your lining. So you're going to bring your piece D corner to your point A up here, and then you're going to evenly distribute the fabric along the curve. Now what I like to do is I like to clip one whole side, and then I like to hand baste it. And that's so that when I go in the sewing machine and I sew along, nothing moves. So I'm going to go ahead and clip this side. Okay, so now that mine's clipped on both sides, I would just go in and hand baste that whole thing so that it's nice and secure for when I have to take it to the sewing machine. So I'll come back when mine's all hand basted, but if you want to jump ahead, once it's hand basted, we're going to sew along here from point A all the way along to the other point A for this side, that side, and that side. I mentioned that I would show you what my pieces look like once they were hand basted. So this is what the exterior looks like, all hand basted, and this is what the lining looks like. It's very roughly hand basted, but now that they're secure, you can kind of see the pouch taking form, taking its shape. But we're going to take it to the sewing machine, like I said before, and we're going to sew from point A all the way along the curve to the other point A for that side, this side here, and this side here. So you're going to do that 4 times because we have 4 side panels. Once the sides have been sewn, so I just sewed both my lining and my exterior, you're going to turn the exterior right side out just as I have, and you're going to push out all of your corners. Just make sure that nothing is caught and the corners are the way you want them to look. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set aside our lining for just a moment. If you're going to be adding a woven label, I have my folded one right here. You can add it right now. I'm going to select this side for my front since they're exactly the same. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to center it up here on this top curve, and then I'm going to machine baste it right here in place. I've added my label to the exterior front right here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab some pins or quilting clips and our lining again. First, you're going to check that there's no loose threads on your lining, and same thing with inside your exterior. You can give each of them a little lint roll. Then what you're going to do is you're going to put your lining inside the exterior with wrong sides facing, so you can see my interfacing and the wrong side together. Now for each of these seams, what we're going to do is we're going to nest them. So we're going to put one seam allowance to one direction and the other to the other direction. So we're going to put them like this and align them nicely. Grab a pin or quilting clip, and you're going to do that to all 4 seams. Now something to note is that on the same side, so my same side here, you want your seam allowances to go the same way. So you can see that my lining one is pointing that way, outward. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to have that pointing outward. So just like that. Then what you're going to do is you're going to bring all the layers together evenly all the way around. You can add more pins and quilting clips on these areas here. Once you've done that, you're going to machine baste all the way around to secure those layers together. And like I said before, when I'm machine basting, I like to use 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I like to increase my stitch length to about 3.5. This is what mine looks like, all machine basted all the way around. Now something I like to do is I actually like to go in now and trim off this extra seam allowance that's hanging over the edge, just so that this edge is nice and straight. I did it a little bit over here so you can see it's a lot straighter. It's completely up to you, but I'm just going to go do that to all 4 or all 3 that are remaining because I already did that one. And then we're going to set this aside while we do the zipper. Moving on to our zipper, we're going to grab our pieces B and C of print A and B and C of print B, and then our 7.5 inch piece of zipper tape. Now, if your pull or slider is inserted, you're just going to remove it and make sure both ends of your tape are closed, just like mine. Now, like I said in the materials section of this video, we're going to be installing piece B of print A with piece C of print B, because these 2 pieces need to go right sides facing with the zipper sewn in between. So we're going to start with these 2 pieces and the zipper tape. And then we're going to set these two aside because we're going to be adding them to the other side of the zipper once this side is sewn. Now, beginning with this side, I'm just going to separate my layers here. We're going to grab our print A, piece B, and our zipper tape, and we're going to put our zipper aligned with the straight edge here, with the right side of the zipper, the teeth, facing the right side of the fabric, just like that. And then we're going to sew across using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, I typically like to sew on the interface side, so I'm going to go ahead and sew mine on this side. Then once that's sewn, we're going to flip back over. It'll be sewn like that. And then we're going to get our lining piece and we're going to line it on top with the right sides facing. Now, if you are using directional fabric, you want to make sure the direction of both prints match. And this is what the layers will look like. So right side of the zipper facing the exterior and then the lining on top. And then you're going to sew across again using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. But you are going to be sewing on this side so you can sew in line with the same seam you just sewed. Now, if you're someone with experience sewing zippers, you may want to sew all 3 layers together at once. And that's completely fine. You can go ahead and do that as well. I just typically like to sew my zipper to the exterior first, then adding the lining. I've now sewn my exterior and lining to my zipper, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up by bringing the fabrics together with wrong sides facing, just like that. And then I pressed it at the iron away from my zipper on both sides. We're now going to attach the remaining 2 panels to the other side of our zipper. So piece C of print A and piece B of print B. So I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to align the straight edge of my panel with the zipper with right sides facing. And I want to make sure that the panels line up and they're aligned straight across. You don't want to move this panel over and then suddenly when you open this up, your panels aren't aligned. So you want to make sure they're aligned straight across when you sew this panel on. So you're going to go ahead and do the same thing as before. Sew across with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Flip over to this side. And then add your print B piece on top with right sides facing. So again, your layers will look something like that. Once this is aligned, you'll flip back over again and sew in line with the first seam. And like I said before, you can sew all 3 layers at once if you prefer. Now that the remaining 2 pieces are sewn to our zipper, we're going to do the same thing as before. We're going to open it up by bringing them together with wrong sides facing, and then we're going to press our fabric away from the zipper on both sides because we are going to be doing a top stitch on both sides of the zipper tape, so here and here. Now, when doing your top stitch, you can sew it across just like this, catching the lining underneath. Or what you can do is when you sew each side, so let's say we're sewing this side, you can move your lining out of the way. So I'm folding it back under, just like that. And I'm only going to catch my exterior. Now, the reason we can do that with this project is because of how this is going to be sewn. So this is going to be sewn like this, and then it's going to be bent like this in the middle. So your lining will never really move in front of the zipper and get caught. It'll actually stay in its place. So you don't necessarily need to catch it when doing your top stitching, but that's completely up to you. It's a personal preference for how you want to do it. Once your zipper is top stitched, it'll look something like that. You're now going to grab your zipper pull and we're going to insert it and leave it in the middle of our zipper tape. The one thing to note when doing this is you want to pay attention to the direction of your fabric. You want the pull to be inserted from the bottom of the print so that it closes upward and it opens downward. So I'm going to insert my pull down over here. Oops. Now the thing with inserting zipper pulls is you want to insert an equal amount of tape into each side of the little slider windows in here. So you can see on each side of my pull, I have an equal amount of tape. Then I just gently push on the pull. Some are a little harder to push than others. And then put my finger like this and I pull the pull. So I'm going to leave mine in the middle. And now we're going to add our magnetic snaps. We're now going to begin installing our snaps. So I just wanted to go through the pieces that you should have for your set. So you should have 4 backing plates. So these are my 4 backing plates here. 2 of the thinner protruding halves, and then 2 of the thicker halves here. So you'll have 2 sockets and 2 studs, and then your backing plates. We're now going to get started with installing those snap pieces. I have my zipper panel here, and I have my 2 paper piece templates for B and C. Now, I've already installed 3 of my halves, but over here I've left 1 undone, which I'm going to show you from start to finish, and then you're going to repeat with these 3. Now, I have 2 things just to tell you right from the beginning that are really important to remember. So when installing your snaps, you want to make sure that you put your studs on one side and your sockets on the other. So 2 studs and 2 sockets. It doesn't matter if you put the sockets on the bottom or the top or vice versa, because as long as there's 2 on one side, 2 of the other, so that when your pouch closes, the opposite pieces are on opposite ends and your pouch will close correctly. The second thing to note is that you're only really going to be cutting anything on the print A piece. See here, my lining is intact. So you want your backing plate and everything to be in here so that your pocket inside is intact. So make sure you only cut anything on this print A piece. So beginning with our markings, you'll notice on pieces B and C, the snap locations are actually included, so you can copy them straight from your paper piece templates to your fabric. However, I prefer to manually mark because when you sew things, sometimes they can shift and move and your pieces no longer match exactly the paper templates. So if you're going to manually mark, you're going to go to this edge here where the fabric and the zipper tape meet, and you're going to mark 5/8 in. And then from this outer edge down here, you're going to mark 1 1/4 inches. So if you're using a ruler, you're going to align your ruler with this part here, the zipper tape, and you're going to do 1 1/4 inches down. So you're going to repeat that for all 4 pieces. Then you're going to grab a backing plate and you're going to center it with that marking. So right in there. And then you're going to use your pen and you're going to copy those vertical lines. And you only need to copy a little bit of them. Now grabbing a seam ripper, we're going to pierce those lines, so cut them. But again, remember, only print A. So we're going to move print B back, so we only catch print A. We're going to insert our seam ripper at the start or the bottom of the line, so I'll come a little bit closer. And then we're going to exit at the top of the line. Now, I don't like to cut the full length of the line because you really don't need it. So you're just going to cut a tiny little piece of it, enough for the prong to fit through. Oops, I pierced a thread, so mine has a little pull now, but that's okay. And then over here, we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to pull on it. So I'm going to get my snap now, and I'm going to insert it from the right side toward the wrong side. So in here, push it through. You can see the prongs are going through, and now the prongs are on the wrong side. Then we're going to grab 2 pieces of Fusible Fleece, and we're going to repeat the same process with the backing plate. So I'm going to center my backing plate, I'm going to copy those vertical lines. And instead of cutting them with a seam ripper, I'm going to cut mine with a pair of scissors. So just like that, a little trim. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to insert them into the prongs. Now, as you can see here, my Fusible Fleece doesn't interfere with my top stitching. So if this was top stitched down, it wouldn't interfere. It would just hit it just slightly. But if your Fusible Fleece is getting a little too close to your top stitching, and let's say it's folding up a bit, you can just trim a little bit off that edge and reinsert it so that it doesn't interfere with your top stitching. So I'm going to add both pieces here. Then I'm going to grab that same back plate and add it on top. Now, the reason we add these Fusible Fleece pieces is so that the edge of our backing plate and even the prongs don't dig into our fabric and eventually over time cause a hole. Some people like to take one of these layers or a different layer. They like to put their backing plate in between and then put another layer. And that's to protect the lining fabric from the backing plate. But it's completely up to you how you'd like to do it. I've never had an issue with the backing plate causing any problems with my lining, so I do mine like this, but it's completely up to you how you'd like to do it. I've also seen others add interfacing on top of the snap, so they fuse some interfacing on here to further protect the lining from the prongs. But again, completely up to you and how you wish to install your snaps. So I'm going to bend my prongs outward You can bend them outward or inward, that's preference. I usually actually like to get a plastic gift card and press these prongs so they don't hurt my fingers. So I'm just gonna bend my prongs with that gift card. Make sure they're nice and tight. So now, as you can see here, my snap is installed and it's in between the lining and the exterior, so it won't be seen once the pouch is complete. So that's what my 4 snaps look like. Again, you're gonna install the remaining 3 pieces, 2 of the same on this side and 2 of the same on that side. It doesn't matter which ones go where as long as you remember the 2 of the same on each end so that it closes just like that. Next, what we're gonna do once all 4 of those snaps are installed is you're gonna bring your lining and your exterior together with wrong sides facing. Make sure those edges are nice and aligned. And we're just gonna do a basting stitch all the way around. So we're gonna machine baste all the way around just to hold those layers together and to keep our zipper closed on both ends. Now that that's basted, we're gonna grab our binding strip and a pair of scissors. We're gonna select one end to start with. I see here that I have a seam right here, so I'm just actually gonna cut that seam off and start with a straight edge. So that'll be my starting point for my binding. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna fold in about 1/2 inch, and you're gonna pick one of the straight sides here to start on. So I'm gonna pick this side and I'm going to place my binding down. I'm going to start sewing with the right side of the binding facing the right side of my fabric. And I'm going to align the edge of the binding with the edge of my zipper panel all the way around. So I'm gonna machine baste this all the way around. Again, we're gonna sew with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance because this is just a basting stitch. So baste it all the way around. And then when you get back to where you started, right over here, you're gonna overlap your binding by about 1 inch, and then you're gonna sew and then stop and then cut the rest of the binding off. So you just want an overlap of about 1 inch, 1 inch, 1.5 inches. It's completely up to you. So you're gonna do it like that, and then at the end, you're just gonna overlap by that inch and then trim off the rest. My binding is now machine basted all the way around my zipper panel, as you can see here. Now, something I like to do, which is optional, it helps me later on when I try to finish my binding, is if you see your starting point here and here, I actually like to bring these layers together so that it's nice and straight, and then I machine baste across here to hold the end together. That way later on when we fold our binding, they stay together neatly and you don't have to fuss with moving them and making sure they're nice and aligned. So I'm just gonna quickly do that. I'm gonna sew right across here with a basting stitch. Now that I've hand basted that little edge right over here, you can see it's all connected. We're now gonna start assembling our pouch. So this is the final assembly of everything. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna mark the middle of our zipper panel on these 2 sides. We need the middle of here and here. However, our zipper is right in the middle, so that can act as our middle marking. If you prefer a mark with a pen, you can also mark it, but for me, that acts as my middle here and over here, so it's already marked. And then to mark the sides here and here, you're just gonna bring that zipper together, fold it evenly, and then you're gonna mark that center fold here and over here. Once that's marked, you're going to do the same thing to this piece. We're going to bring our seams together here and here. We're going to mark the middle. Same thing on this side, here and here. Mark the middle. And then same thing to your 2-piece D side panels. Here and here, mark the middle. Here and here, mark the middle. Now what that tells us is where each of these parts need to go. So you're gonna bring your zipper panel and you're gonna find the front. So this here is my front. So I want my pocket to open the opposite way. So you can see here, my front and my zipper is gonna close up and open downward. So when I open my pouch, I can go like this and it's not the opposite direction. So I'm gonna bring my zipper or my middle mark over here, do the middle mark over there. I'm going to pin or clip it in place just like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Grab another clip there, and then bring these middle markings together as well. And same thing over here. Now, what I typically like to do once these 4 central points are clipped or pinned in place, I like to go to my machine and just sew on the spot there, 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 and there so they don't move and they stay aligned. Once those are machine basted, I then grab my quilting clips or pins and I evenly distribute the fabric the rest of the way around. You should see it should fit pretty perfectly along those curves. So I'll do that all the way around, and then I actually like to hand baste it again. I like to hand baste it so that nothing moves, but again, it's a preference. You can just sew it with pins and clips if that's easier. Once it's pinned, clipped, or hand basted, you're going to go here and you're going to sew all the way around using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so you're going to do that, and I'll be right back. Once your zipper panel is sewn to your exterior, so the pouch body, it'll look something like this. We're now going to do our last step, which is finishing our binding. So we're going to start by folding it outward like this. Okay, and it's revealing kind of what the pouch is going to look like when it's finished. It'll look really nice in here at the zipper panel. And then on the outside here, we're going to fold our binding, the raw edge in toward the seam allowance, just like so, and then we're going to fold over to conceal the seam we sewed all the way around. So it'll look something like that. You're then going to sew either by hand or by machine. I like to sew my binding by hand because it gives the look of a purse frame. So when it folds like this, it'll look seamless, almost as if there's a purse frame in there. But you're welcome to do either by hand or by machine. Some things I do want to note is that depending on the thickness of the layers in certain areas, you will have to fold in less or more. So right over here is really thick, so we're going to fold in a little bit less in order to get over that thickness. So you can see here I folded in a little bit less, and somewhere like over here, I can fold in a little bit more to cover that seam allowance to maintain the same size binding throughout. And also at the start and end of our binding, so remember where we did that basting stitch? Now that those are basted together, it's actually very easy now to fold that in and fold that over because they stay together. So again, we're going to sew it either by hand or by machine. I will be sewing by hand, and I'll show you a little clip of me sewing by hand. I'm all ready now to start hand sewing. So I just used some quilting clips to just fold some of the binding and hold it in place for when I start hand sewing. I also have my needle and thread, and I like to do it double. So I thread it and then I tie my knot with both threads. I'm gonna take a seat now. My seat is a bit creaky, so you will hear it. So what I like to do is I like to start by just putting my knot somewhere in the middle in here, so you'll never see it because my knot is usually really messy. So I put it in there. Then I pick up some fabric down here, and I am using a digital print. And sometimes with digital prints, I find the thread does pull when the needle goes through it. So just keep that in mind. I am using a really sharp needle, but that could be a possibility with the digital print. So I start by sewing just under my seam so that when my binding comes down, it'll cover it. Then I pick up a little piece of my binding. So you can see here just a little bit. Sometimes I pick up more, sometimes I usually don't go less than that, but sometimes I pick up a bit more. And then I just keep going all the way around. So I'll take a little bit from the bottom. See the thread just pulled? It's because of that needle. There we go. Push my needle through and pull. And then I keep going and just pick up a little bit more. Pull. And I just keep going all the way around. So I'll do a little bit on camera and I'll do it in normal speed. So feel free to skip ahead. I also hope my head isn't in the way because I can't see what it's recording right now. So I do apologize if my head or my hair gets in the way. And this is about the speed that I typically hand sew. I'll sit in front of the TV, I'll watch something. Right now on my TV is actually Hell's Kitchen. There's a live streaming thing of it. So I just have it on the background and it's a random season that I've never seen. Okay, so that's a bit of what I do. I'm now going to go ahead and finish the rest of it and I'll come back. My binding is now all hand sewn all the way around. It looks something like that. Now I'm going to go and press my pouch, but before I do that, I'm just going to open my zipper so you can see here your pocket, and that'll make it a little bit easier for me to press all these creases out. So I'm going to do that really quick. I'm back from the iron and I have my completed pouch here. I just did a really quick press because I'm short for time, but this is what the outside looks like. And if I open up my snaps, this here is what the inside zipper pocket looks like. So if you just bring those together, that's how you close the pouch. So I really hope you enjoyed this sewing tutorial. I hope you got to make one of these too. I think this one here came out really cute with this fabric combination. If you're looking for the written instructions, you can find them down below in my Etsy shop, but I'll see you all next time with a new project and a new video.